YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. The Lemons race car is done, and the Corvette is just about ready for track days. It means that this is going to be a really busy year with lots of cool stuff and a lot of time at the track. With all that track time, there is a key piece of equipment that you probably need. Not only to be cool, but also to help you out. You need some sort of pit vehicle. And what, my friends, is one of the best ways to travel around the pits? On a pit bike, of course. So I went out and bought one. Behold my 2022 SSR SR 110. They sticker for about $1,100, but I got one on Facebook Marketplace for $750. Once I got it home and I ripped around my driveway a couple times, I noticed two things that weren't great though. First, I noticed that it bogs a bit when you give it gas and it stalls a fair bit. It doesn't really want to keep running. Second, I noticed that there was a little bit of gas leaking out from under the gas cap. Upon some investigation, I discovered that the neck of the gas tank actually has a crack in it. Well, that's not gonna do. So it's time to fix this thing up so it can roam around the pits in style. Today, I'm gonna replace the gas tank and upgrade the carburetor of the bike. The gas tank I got is an OEM replacement from a small motorcycle shop online. 63 bucks. Nothing fancy, it comes with the fuel valve and a new gas cap, but most importantly, there's no cracks in the neck of the tank. The carburetor though is a little bit of an upgrade. It's a Nibbi PE22FL, which I got online for about 70 bucks. Nibbi makes Mikuni clones. The 22 in the name means that it has a 22mm inlet flow opening, while the FL means it has a flange mount for attaching it to the engine. That stock carburetor has a 16mm inlet for the flow opening. That means it's a little bit more restrictive, not as much air gets in. While you can use a variety of different sizes, most people online seem to pick between the 19mm or the 22, which gives it better airflow and makes a little more power, as well as seems to be the best balance between performance and reliability. So let's get into the install. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take the bodywork and the seat off so we get better access to the gas tank. So Phillips screwdriver for a screw here and here. And then there's two 8mm bolts underneath the seat, which you can see right here, these two main bolts. And then the whole thing comes off as one giant assembly. All right, so the whole thing should just come off. Oh. There's also a Phillips here and a Phillips here. I'm gonna show you. Here's what the other side looks like. You can see that there's the screw and there's the nut. All right, now we'll see. The whole thing should lift much easier. So those sort of pop off. And there, it's the entire assembly. There's two little kind of skids that go up under these loops on the frame. The whole thing comes off. That's pretty handy. You can see this is a pretty simple setup. You've got your engine, your carb, and your fuel tank. The valve that goes into the fuel filter right into the carb. I mean, it's pretty simple. These engines are a Honda clone of a Honda 50cc. I believe they've increased the stroke to get the higher displacement, but I could be wrong. But pretty easy. First, make sure your fuel's off. You're gonna pop both of these. You can actually see on this one that the rubber gasket is kind of destroyed, or the rubber grommet that goes around this screw. So the new one came with new grommets, so that's good. All right, the gas tank is off. It's a pretty easy process. The hardest part was actually getting the end of the fuel line off. What you'll see is I've taken that fuel line and I've zip tied it up here so nothing drips. As well as since the valve is off, there's just maybe like one or two drops, which I caught with a paper towel. This rubber had a little clamp ring right here that kind of held things on. And so I used these to loosen that. And then I just gripped onto the rubber and kind of wiggled it back and forth. It had been there since the bike was made, so probably 2 or 3 years. And it wasn't really moving very much. And so I needed to do that. It did mess up the rubber a little bit here. So what I may do, depending on if the carb comes with a new hose, I may just cut off like 1 inch of this. There's plenty of lines, so and that'll give us some fresh rubber in the middle here, which was nice and pliable. And if we go over here, you can see the two gas tanks side by side. And I like, generally when I replace parts, I like comparing them side by side just to make sure everything sort of looks the same, dimensions are the same, no real issues. These even have the same logos since this is an OEM replacement. You can see that the gasket here got sort of destroyed. I don't know if the prior owner had, played around with it or replaced it with his own, but see, this seems to be a lot better shape. And then there's the same thing at the front on both of these. This one's in better shape than the old one. Slightly different design. You'll see this is a little taller, a little more cushioning. 2 gas caps, and so I'll probably transfer this over to the new one. But overall, yeah, they look pretty good. One thing I did notice, the new one has little icons, and it's probably hard to see, icons for full and empty, or I guess reserve, and middle is off. Whereas on the old one, if you look, it actually says res for reserve, on at the bottom, and off is kind of the middle position. But otherwise, these both look pretty good. But yeah, so now we'll transfer everything over and replace it. All right, so I reinstalled the 12mm bolts, and I reconnected the fuel line. I'll note that I used some snips, and I cut off just a little bit of the hose where the rubber had split a little bit. And now everything's hooked up. Rather than start it now or put gas in it, I'm gonna change the carb too, and so I'll do that next. This is the new carburetor. It comes with an air intake, the carburetor itself, some of the flange fittings and gaskets, as well as the mounting hardware, some different jets if you need them, and a inline fuel filter, which I'll replace the old one over on the bike. All right, so I've attached the kind of main part of the throttle here, and so you can see there's a keyed line in the intake here, or the intake valve, and you basically slide the collar and the screw-on part over the cable, put the spring, and then there's a little plastic spacer, and then slide the throttle cable into that little recess, and then attach it like so. And then I've got the carburetor here, and so you can see it's super shiny. Seems like a very nicely made thing. And so this is going to mount on this flange like so. I've got the heat gasket and then the main gasket as well as the screws. And we'll get this thing attached. All right, so the carb is mounted. You can see if I turn the throttle, you can see the carburetor opening and closing, which is exactly what we want to see. Next up, I'm going to attach the air filter, which is basically going to use this hose clamp and attach on here. All right, so we've got the air filter attached. And next is the fuel filter, which is going to connect here, and then it's going to connect to the end of the original hose. All right, so this is attached, and there are 2 of these little kind of hose clamps that I had to adjust. But now everything's attached there. All right, so the fuel valve is still turned off, but I filled probably up to about here, maybe put a quarter tank in just so that there's fuel. I haven't turned this on yet, but we're gonna tune the carburetor to get it near where we think it needs to be and then go from there. So this is the idle air screw. Kind of hard to see, it's kind of dark here, but you're gonna turn this all the way in until it stops. So turn it to the right. It actually didn't go that far. And it's hard to tell in the video, but the screw has a dark mark on the half of the screw and then brass on the other. And so you're gonna back this out 3 turns. Half, 1, half, 2, half, 3. And that's sort of our starting point. And that's gonna be adjusting the air and fuel for the idle. I'm not an expert on carburetors, so maybe it's just air, maybe it's just fuel. And then you'll notice on this, which is sort of the main adjustment, I think for how far open the main throttle is, I've used a Sharpie on the top knob for it, and it's all the way closed right now. So I turned it all the way to the right till it was fully closed, and then I put the Sharpie on it. And you're gonna go 3 1/4 turns out. So yeah, let's see. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3. We're gonna start kind of there. Actually, I think it's 3 3/4. Let me check my notes. Yeah, you want to go 3 3/4 out. So that's what it's on now. So we're gonna wheel it out and see if we can get it to start. All right, so we're gonna turn on the fuel. Which once, oh, you can see it going through the filter. And once you get this thing started, we'll turn the choke on. Once you get it started, I may have to adjust the carb a little bit, but we'll see. All right, I've got all the body work back on. I'm gonna do the carburetor tuning on a day that's not having 40-mile-an-hour winds and 10 degrees outside, but that's all there is to it. We should be all set. So that wraps up the pit bike. Now it's ready to rock. And in my next video, I'm gonna be covering the Corvette. I should be having my new wheels mounted really soon, the end of this coming week, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy this, and until next time, Fred out.